Good afternoon, dear participants. We're just giving ourselves a few minutes to settle in, and we'll be starting shortly. So let's just wait for a couple of minutes. We'll be starting shortly. Thanks. All right. It's 10 minutes past 2 East African time, and we are good to go. Just to welcome you again to this yet another webinar forming part of the Young Mentorship Series organized by the Uganda Law Society Young Lawyers Committee under the auspices of our big umbrella, the Uganda Law Society. Your host for the evening is Timothy Kaja. That's my name. I am an associate at KT Advocates. I'm also a lecturer at Kyambogo University and Uganda Christian University. It's my pleasure to host you this afternoon. And this afternoon, we'll be looking at yet another crucial and timely topic. We'll be talking in opening up more spaces in the field of law, and our focus will be on the academy, of course. How do we get in there? What does it take? How do we survive in there? How impactful is it? Is it really a viable option, or it's yet another try and error thing? We're very, very lucky to have an informative panel that we're looking forward to learning lots and lots of information from them that will be crucial in helping those who are still pondering as whether to consider the academia as a career choice for them to undertake or to progress with the law. Or is it viable or is it not? Our first panelist is already on call. We are very, very, very happy to have him. He's a decorated person who has been in the academia for quite some time, a household name for many of us who have had our law school or attended law schools in Uganda. And his name is Dr. Daniel Ruheza. He's a lecturer at Makerere University School of Law and the author of We Don't Teach That at the University. So probably this is also just part of what you would not expect to see on your university syllabus, but very, very, very crucial for us in deciding on how we turn the tide in our career. Nice to have you, Doctor.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here. I hope I can be heard.
Yes, you can be heard loud and clear. Doctor, you've just muted yourself. Yes, Doctor, you can be heard loud and clear. Anything that you would wish to add just for the introduction purposes? Yes, you're now unmuted. Yes, you're now unmuted, yes. Sorry, Doctor, we can't hear you now. All right, let's just give Doctor a few more minutes to settle in as we introduce our second panelist, another distinguished person in the academia, also part of the lecturing team at the prestigious Makerere University School of Law, the Harvard of Africa, so they say, within the building, so everything is going in the right direction. Our second panelist is Miss Nona Tamali. Like I said, she's an assistant lecturer at Makerere University School of Law and the co-editor of yet another informative book titled transforming climate change finance in the era of sovereign debt distress. Nice to have you, Nona.
Thank you, Timothy, and thank you to the Uganda Law Society for extending the invitation to speak on the panel. I'm happy to be here and to share insights.
All right, that's good. Doctor, do we have you loud and clear now? Sorry, we've lost just Doctor for a moment there. We hope to have him back on the call very, very, very shortly. So probably, Nona, I'll just, Doctor is back. Yes, Doctor, good to see that you're back. If you can try to unmute your microphone.
Right, thank you very much. Sorry, we are having an examination of sorts at the university. And so we are not able to do as I hoped we would. Yes, glad to be here once again. Thank you for having me. And thank you for also inviting Nona to be part of the discussion this afternoon. I hope my internet is better now and that you're able to hear me very well.
Yes. You're loud and clear, good enough that even can have a visual of yourself. Yes. Doctor, will start with you, and our first part of the discussion would want to see the drivers or what inspires us to join the academia. And there goes our first question, to know what inspired you to make the choice to join the academia.
Okay, thank you very much. Slight background. I've always felt that knowledge is to be shared. Knowledge is to be shared. And so for as long as I remember, whenever I came across some good information, I longed to share it with others. That meant that even when I was in my law school, whenever I come across any bit of research, it gave me full satisfaction when that research, new knowledge in my mind would be shared with others. And so on many occasions, I would end up sharing information that I've either picked from other students or that I've come across or in a class discussion with others. It gave me a certain level of pleasure that I may not be able to explain clearly, but it was always something that I felt was pertinent to me as an individual, not to be a selfish hoarder of information. So come to my work life, I started working at a company called Shonubi Musoke and Company Advocates. While working at Shonubi Musoke and Company Advocates, one of my supervisors once sent me to deliver some information at Uganda Christian University. And when I delivered it and realized while I was there that they were in need of legal researchers, research assistants, teaching assistants, I immediately put in my paperwork and I was selected. I must also say it was also because some of the people who were teaching there were my former lecturers. For example, now Justice of the Supreme Court, the Honorable Dr. Lilian Ekirikubinza Tibatemwa, who was the dean at that time. And so because I had known her before and she was a mentor of mine at the university, the fact that she was working there part-time also inspired me to join part-time as a teaching assistant at the university, UCU. And I would later on also be inspired by my supervisor at the workplace, who was also teaching a course in commercial law, company law at the university. So I began working part-time at the university, teaching there. I realized that I gained a lot of pleasure in dispensing information which ideally would not have a space to be dispensed in the courtroom, all right? Because the courtroom is very limited in what you can and cannot do. I found that oftentimes most of the arguments that one would present in a courtroom would be branded academic and impractical. But I felt that there was a very unique space for academic work and academic arguments that could improve the quality of judgments, the quality of argument, and to bolster arguments that had been made in the courts of law. And so for me, it worked out very well to have both an academic career as well as a legal career. Over time, I realized that legal practice, to an extent, became very black letter law. At that time, judges that I interfaced with, magistrates that I interfaced with, were not necessarily so keen to engage in new frontiers of looking at legal material. Certain aspects of the law practice, like bail, trademarks, and so on, were mundane insofar as they could even be done by a law clerk that did not need expert legal know-how. And so my love for the dispensation of the law in other fora, like teaching, increased, because there I was given the freedom to explore my inquisitive mind, my reformist mind on matters of the law. In the academia, I was able to ask questions and challenge the presentation of the law as it was, and dream of better aspects of the law. And so when I started engaging with works like those of Lord Denning, who in many of his judgments was ahead of his time and would later on 10, 20 years down the road, 30 years, his law, though despised before, would then be collected and become the law or the decisions of that day, encouraged me to give more and more into the academia. So in conclusion, this is how I actually began this passion for academic work.
All right, great. Yes, to pick out that knowledge is to be shared. Knowledge is to be shared. And of course, you mentioned that your part-time role, something that we'll be looking on later in the webinar. So we got to know now, we've had a snippet of how Dr. transitioned into it. Would like to know on your side of the story, how do you transition into teaching? How do you make that choice? How easy was it to take that path?
All right, thank you, Timothy. So mine was slightly different from Doctor's path. When I left law school, I remember thinking, what am I going to do? So not more than 10 years ago. And I had a myriad of options to choose from. I remember I thought, okay, I could go to a law firm. I had done my internship during law school at an NGO, so I had experience with nonprofit work. So those were the two main options I was thinking about at the time. Of course, dreaming big and hoping that I'd work at an international organization one day. So I did join a law firm. I worked at Ngoro Mtebi Advocates for some time. I enjoyed it. It was great. But also at some point, then I transitioned to an NGO because I was also curious about that work. I had done it before and enjoyed it. But I also didn't really enjoy the courtroom experience just from the time I was at the law firm. And I also wanted to do more work away from my desk, between the desk and the courtroom. So I wanted to travel. I wanted to do much, I was also very curious about development work. So I decided to take a leap, and I joined an NGO. I worked for one NGO for a while, an NGO here in Uganda called Initiative for Social and Economic Rights. That was also a great experience doing human rights work. I then left for my master's program, and while I was there, I worked with Oxfam International. So now I'm getting to the international NGO experience. I also really enjoyed that, but one thing that stood out for me was I used these leaps to help me figure out what it was I enjoyed about my work and what I did not enjoy. And so when I was leaving law school, and this is very important for law students because already I get students who come to me and say, I don't know what to do. Most of us did not know, we figured it out, as we went along the way. So for me, it was sort of an elimination. I went through those different career options to see what I enjoyed and what I did not. And so when I left Oxfam, I decided to try working as an independent consultant. I really enjoyed that as well. I had a brief stint with Parliament. So I've had the benefit of working in both the public, the private, and the NGO, the non-profit sector. But one thing cut across for me was I really enjoyed doing research. I like to do research. So while doctors was teaching, mine was to have a place where I'm able to do independent research. So the problem that I found in working all those different places was when I was in the law firm, I had to do research to help defend a client, right? When I was in the NGO, I had to do research based on what, depending on what program we had, what fund, what project we're working on. And so I yearned to be able to work independently and do research independently, which is why for me, academia was a very attractive option. That was the first, but also interestingly, I know people give this advice when you're looking for a career option, look at the people you admire and then see what they've done and try to follow them. I really admired lecturers. I did not think it was a viable option for me when I was a student because there were all these myths around it. You had to have, yes, a master's degree, but also apparently we had to have worked 5 years in practice before you even thought about teaching. And so I didn't consider it at all in my initial period after leaving law school. But when I had the master's and I had worked in all these other spaces, I realized it actually fit what I wanted. But most importantly, the people that I look up to, people whom I admired and wanted to follow their career path happened to be in academia, teaching here, but also people that I met when I was doing my graduate education. So for me, that's how I got there. But when you say transition and how I found the transition, for me, I look at academia as part of my career path, right? It's not fixed. I don't know if I'm going to be in academia for the next 10 or 20 years. I have no idea. I don't predict the future, just as I didn't know I would be here 10 years ago, right? And so for me, I use it as an opportunity. I know some of us might have heard of the 10,000 hour rule. It was initially from a book by Malcolm Gladwell, The Outliers, and people have challenged it. But the point of the 10,000 hour rule is that you need around 10,000 hours before you can become an expert in something. And so for me, I decided my 10,000 hours before I become an expert in a field could be spent in any of the career options. I could have done it in a law firm and zeroed down on a field. I could have done it in an NGO. And I can do it in academia. So for me, the academic career is just part of my journey, right? I'm doing this now and I'm enjoying it, and it's part of my learning, right? So I'm saying this because I know that there are people who worry, but if I join teaching and I don't enjoy it, or what if I just want to teach for 5 or 10 years and then go? That's perfectly okay, right? So the point is that just as we're discussing transitioning to, there's also transition from, and there's many people who have done it, just like Dr. Reza was saying. We have Justice Tibatemwa and Justice Chisache, who came from actually teaching at the law school. We have people who are leading international organizations, Dr. Rose Mwebaze, Professor Patricia Kamari-Mbote actually taught at the University of Nairobi for over 30 years, and she's now the head of the legal division at UNEP. And so the opportunities are immense. For me, it's just part of, it can be part of a journey and part of you growing in a legal area of interest, but it can also be that you decide that that's what you want to do. And so for all of these options made it more attractive for me. Thank you.
Wow. You speak about admiration, the enjoyment. So I see you pointing at something to do that I can conclude to be passion. So something that you really like, then of course, it's just a high that the results will come your way. if you're passionate about it. Yes, on our question number 3, it's something that even beyond the legal space, we struggle with the importance, or how viable or how strong, how relevant is the academia or the people that sit in the classroom, aka lecture rooms, to the entire legal fraternity as is. We know when you look at the just so generally said teachers outside, probably in our high schools and primary schools, how they say how we underlook them in terms of the pay that they get. So I would like to hear from Doctor, how relevant and how important, how vital is the academia in the if you look at the wider spectrum of legal practice across the globe? Doctor?
Okay. Yes, I am right here. Okay. First of all, to be honest, legal practice is not legal practice without academic work, without academic research. You need academic work, academic research in order to make legal practice what it is celebrated to be. All the legal opinions you hear about, all the legal work, even judgment writing itself can only be done and done well when there is legal academic work. I had the opportunity at some point in my career to work with now His Lordship Justice Musa Sekana. We used to teach together at Uganda Christian University. We were teaching criminal procedure, we were teaching civil procedure, and I think we taught together administrative law. When he went to pursue his master's degree, he started writing. I think his first book was on either administrative law, and then later on he wrote civil procedure and criminal procedure. But that grounding he received in academia has made him the prolific judgment writer that we celebrate him to be today. Does this mean that you cannot be a prolific judge or judgment writer without academic work? Obviously not. But it adds to your level of analysis. And that is where we need to, maybe where I can cement my argument, the level of analysis that is needed in doing legal work and doing legal work very well. Many times we underlook it, but it plays such a big role. Now look at certain judgments. For example, the judgment in Ntambala versus Uganda, which was a judgment by Her Lordship Justice Ekirukubinza Tibatemwa regarding the question of corroboration. Look at the judgment by the Supreme Court regarding the whole question of amicus curiae, where the law before that was that you cannot invite yourself as an amicus curiae to court. Those were the judgments being relied upon in Kenya. But now, because you have judges who are more attuned to the role of academic work, or who have done research before, they are more accepting. The whole amicus curiae conversation was done by legal professors, if I'll call them that general name, at Makerere University, who made the arguments, collected the data, did the analysis, which the Supreme Court would later on research and rely upon. There have been instances whereby I have been consulted as an academician regarding certain cases. I may not be at liberty to share which cases they are, lest you think differently of the lawyers that finally won those cases, but I was consulted. I gave my opinions that supported their cases. So if you look at certain quality of judges, they tend to have had their leg in one way or another, either in legal research or in academic work. And so I think that is what we bring in. Two, I've noticed that there is a certain authenticity that comes with doing a little bit more legal work and also being exposed. For example, Nona has studied in Uganda, but has also studied in the United States of America. So she brings a certain quality to the way she does law, legal consulting, legal work, which probably may not be the case for somebody, and I be very careful here, may not be the case for somebody who has not necessarily been so exposed. And so that helps to support whatever legal engagement is there. When the Law Reform Commission, when the Attorney General's office, and even NGOs are pushing for laws such as the Transitional Justice Policy, pushing for laws such as now Uganda Law Reform Commission is working on bringing all legal treaties together, are pushing for laws on copyright and so on. A lot of consultation is made. Most times, consultation is made to the Uganda Law Society. The Uganda Law Society then calls upon its members. In that call on members, it will also rely on the opinions of those of us who have a leg in academic work and research in order to improve the quality of the work that is there. Maybe lastly, what I'll talk about is we also participate in the clusters of the Uganda Law Society. For example, I head the cluster on rule of law and strategic litigation. Other people may be doing certain things. Dr. Kakoza, for example, is very strong into copyright law and intellectual property. He's a partner in Bianca Hika, but also teaches the law with us. So you can see how academic work intermingled with other spaces where we are helps to bring up those special spaces, gives us that special added look at things which we would probably not have been able to look at if we were strictly going by black letter law. I remember when I was doing my doctoral thesis, and and I remember making one of my very first arguments, and I was asked, but why is the law the way it is? And I remember answering, the law is the law. You know, that is how the law is supposed to be. And they laughed at me because I had not yet opened my mind to the reality that if you look at the law carefully, the law does not operate in a vacuum. At my law school here, I always challenge my students to think about the case for reform. Why? Because the law is a living thing that breathes, dies, gets amended. And once we do not have that angle to what we do, we tend to be unhelpful in society. All right. Now, we look at your 1995 Constitution. Issues such as the unique case for women's rights, the unique case for disability rights, the unique case for public interest litigation, and many other things have been brought about, written about, researched about, and then added to our legislative framework by those lawyers who have something they do in being researchers or lecturers. And lastly, lawyers tend to be quite proud about what we do and who we are. Being a lecturer keeps me humble because I continue to interface with amazing, brilliant students who think in so many different ways and angles. I'll give you two examples. One of my students, and I am now supervising his thesis at master's level. I met him in his undergrad. He's now writing on space law. I had never interfaced with space law apart from one hour class in my international law class. And that's because my lecturer at that time, Judy Obitre Gama, knew someone who was doing something on space law. But this student, David Kasibant, has delved deeper and deeper into space law. I even invite him to come and speak to my students. Another student who some of you may hear about is called Bwesige Bwamwesigire, but used to be called Brian Bwesige. He moved from law went into literature, and he is now a doctoral holder and a lecturer somewhere in an American university in literature. Now, you'd wonder what literature has to do with law. But those of you who did literature as an A-level subject before you joined law, you know how critical it is. So there are certain universities that now are teaching a course, a degree course on law and literature, law and architecture, etc., etc. So teaching also keeps you humble, to be able to realize that you're not all that, and there are other people who are better than you, and you should have your head and mind open enough to receive information from the students and other individuals, instead of being in this bubble of feeling that you are the most important individual simply because your name is the first one on the door of your legal practice. This is no way to despise those who have their names on the door. After all, we also have our names on the doors in the faculty. But I hope you get the point that I'm trying to make. Thank you very much.
Yes. We have you, Doctor, there. We hear the point of the quality of the analysis, the quality of the judgments that we get, and the quality of judges themselves. And of course, a kind reminder for all of us to stay humble and how we interact with the upcoming talent in the law schools. You mentioned master's level, but so probably not to roll out the quality that we see even at undergraduate level. Doctor, we'll just stay with you for a moment to just tell us, you told us, at least you had a shot at being at these probably you could say tier one for Uganda standards, the law firms there, and at the same time teaching at university. Would wish to know how you balance that. How do we say that I have responsibilities here? I have to file a pleading here, but I also have to attend class somewhere in Mukono, a few kilometers outside Kampala with a lot of traffic jam.
Yes. Now that is a real big challenge. Thank God to an extent that with the use of artificial intelligence and the internet, Google Meet and Zoom technologies, that has made it slightly easier for us. One of my colleagues teaches a class in the university in a university in China and does it at 3 a.m. Via Zoom. So the world has opened up a lot, and the more you have universities that are willing to explore the use of these technologies, it becomes much easier for us to speak, to teach, and to learn as well from these spaces. So balancing is not easy, I must admit. I think the ladies generally tend to do it better on the one hand, or are wiser than us. Some ladies will decide, like Professor Sylvia Tamale decided, that she will drop everything else and concentrate on her academic work. And so you would be sure that she will always be at the faculty, either teaching or in her office researching or advocating somewhere. We men, I don't know if it's because of our testosterone levels and feeling we can do everything, we tend to try, but with varying degrees of success. Either you will start off as an advocate, 311 full-time, with minimal research and minimal advancement in legal and academic work, and therefore you tend to teach courses that are quite practical: land law, civil procedure, criminal procedure, law of evidence, etc. Or you will try to do the balancing, but one side has to pay the price at one point in time, and so balancing, honestly, is not easy. I remember struggling in those days. I had no vehicle. I had to jump on a taxi to go to UCU. It was not easy. It was not easy, but the timetables were a bit easier for me at that point in time. But later on, I struggled, and probably it's one of the reasons why I ended up joining Makerere University when going to UCU became difficult. So I ended up moving to Makerere University and giving more time to academia as the love for what I do today increased. But that does not mean I don't enjoy my moment in court once in a while. I still have my practicing certificate renewed. I still do legal work, legal advisory work. I still chair board meetings for companies that are in commercial law and so on and so forth. But of course, it is a 70-30 or 60-40 kind of thing for me personally. I know there are some people who do a better job, but I have personally not been able to balance totally to say 50% academic work, 50% legal practice. And I've also argued that the looking at academic work as non-practice, in my view, is wrong, because we actually do a lot of legal practice, which is, and I don't know why people keep thinking that it is not. I mean, compared to, for example, people working in Administrator General's office, certain departments in the Attorney General's chambers, I think we end up interfacing a lot with practical issues of the law than some people may think. I mean, I do a lot of legal advisory work, among other things. Now, this is not to sanitize the fact that academic work is still criticized in the courtroom. I have lost my fair share of cases in the courtroom, not necessarily because I'm an academician, but because the judge has not seen things my way. But yes, in conclusion, without going around in circles, I think that balancing is not easy. Some seasons you succeed, other seasons you struggle.
I hear you loud and clear. So I'd like to bring back Nona to tell us what it really entails to have a career in the academia, in that you'll have to struggle at times. What is it that what makes of the lot that we have to carry in while pursuing a career in the academic space? Yes, Nona.
All right, thank you, Timothy. So typically, I think when people, my assumption, at least when I was before I joined, or even when I was a student at the law school, was that, well, lecturers come and teach us. Except those who we knew were in courts legal practice, which is litigation, where we saw that they were actively involved, or somehow we knew where, if we knew where someone else was working, like they were doing part-time, we just assumed that all they did, was come teach, grade us, mark coursework, mark exams, but that's almost only 20% of the job description. So it would be, for those who are interested, it would be helpful to know that teaching and grading students is just a really small portion of what we do. So we also are expected to do research, which makes sense. We are supposed to be intellectually ambitious. And that means that should inform the way we teach, but also in terms of writing articles, books, publishing generally. We are also expected to take part in community service. In other words, we should be doing things to build the community. Communities that we live with, communities we live among should be benefiting from our scholarship. We are also expected to apply for grants, to get funding for different research projects, which of course builds your brand as an academic and funds your work, secondly, but also it brings funds to the university. And so that is also part of it. And so the typical, while it's not your ordinary 9-to-5 job, it definitely can be less sometimes and much more on other days, right? And so it can entail teaching a class, it can entail doing research, maybe you're writing a paper. And the thing is, and like Dr. said, because we now have technology, I say this to my students, we are not working. I personally don't feel like I'm constrained to work within our borders, right? I don't limit myself to do work within the Ugandan space or within that only affects the Ugandan jurisdiction. I have a preference for work at a regional level and an international level, although I do engage a lot with national work. So what that means is I'm always on the search for opportunities. That means maybe I'm doing collaborations with academia abroad, maybe some in the African region, maybe some also in Europe or in America, name it, right? And so it could be that I'm then working on research, maybe a research project around that. Maybe we're organizing a symposium, and then you have to coordinate and get pieces from people all over. And that actually takes a lot of work. Then maybe you have to be attending conferences. I don't know if people know that is also part of academia. That is the good part. For those who are interested, we are required to travel and attend conferences. Or you can attend the ones here, but you can also apply far and wide. And that comes with writing papers so that you can qualify to attend the conference and present your work. And so it definitely is beyond teaching. You know, we're not limited to teaching. But also to add to what Dr. just said around the role of academia, I think we also play a really, really big role in academic activism. And that's include that, of course, when we hear activism, it's just this the human rights space and constitutional law, but even broader, we take part in activism in commercial law, also in transforming commercial law, making it work for the everyday person. So we have to come up with interventions. So for those who don't know, there is the business law clinic at Makerere University, which is aimed at helping the everyday person who is facing challenges with understanding legal principles, commercial legal principles. So for instance, small business owners, people who work in markets, to be able to understand the legal aspects of the work that they do and support them. And so there's also that. We have the public interest law clinic, which I've been a part of and have instructed their clinical legal education program, which I was also a part of years back as a student. So that also, I am just giving you a picture, right? I'm not yet even mentioned consulting. So sometimes there'll be opportunities for consulting, like Dr. said. And this is just thinking a person who is thinking of it in the academic frame. So before you go that's before you do anything outside, the other work that Dr. was talking about. So as I said, it's quite broad. There's a myriad of things to do. That should not scare you if it's something that you're interested in. If this kind of work is what calls to you, I can assure you I have the fun part about the work is getting to meet people from all over the world. As long as you're willing to put your work out there, there are people who are willing to help, right? So I've worked with a fantastic team of academics who are based abroad under the umbrella of Afronomics law, for those of you who have heard of it. And they're just lawyers who are interested in international economic law. And I can tell you I have benefited so much because I'm able to participate in book projects, to collaborate with academics across the world, like I already said. I'm able to travel and attend events. I'm able to write. There's a very big difference. I keep saying, they keep saying, oh, comparison is the thief of joy, and the only person you should be comparing yourself with is you. And they all sound like platitudes until it's happening. I can see a big difference in, for instance, my academic research and writing from participating in such initiatives. And as opposed to if I was not, right? And the thing though is that it's not, no one forces you. That's the thing about academia. It's the beauty of it, but also the challenge. The intellectual ambition is something that is personal, it is individual. When I worked in other spaces, I had to deliver based on, for instance, a work plan or whatever a client needed, But in this space, you are the one to determine what you want to do. And so it's up to you. You define your brand, you grow your name, and the work that you do will be based on how much you're putting into it. So that's just a summary of what the typical day would look like for us in the field.
Wow, it sounds really quite a mouthful. But like you say, it's so not to scare probably those who have ambitions to join the academic space, but just to give you a highlight of what you need to be ready for. Probably you could pick out what would even actually attract you more into the space, as opposed to fearing that which you think might burden you in the space. So for the other part of our discussions, Nona, on the part-timing bit. where I would have to kind of at least take the lead in for the moment, just to yes. Yeah, yes, just to give more insight into our listeners, because like Doctor has said, at times you may not have the luxury to work fully in an academic institution, probably university lecture. So you'll have to, you have heard of the word part-time. You'll have to work part-time here and then part-time there. So that what needs that at some point you have to negotiate with your employer to do probably the 9 to 5. And that is not an easy part to go about, but to ready yourself for it. Firstly, if you know that that is your aim, you want first put in some hours into it to demonstrate that you can actually do more than your desktop work in the office or go to the courtroom. So you must show that firstly you can handle your work in the law firm or in-house very, 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 very well. If you can do that and you can go over and beyond, it means that given the chance, you could create for yourself more hours to handle other thing that you would love, and that would be the academic bit of it. You could free up probably 6-8 hours a week to go and go into a classroom or a lecture room to share the knowledge that we've had. So this being overly good and creating your time gives you the leverage to negotiate with your employees, probably a law firm, because in the first place, if you're not delivering well at the law firm, then why would they even have to bother or to risk losing more of your hours during the work time for you to probably go into a university? So you must first do your work well, and then after you've done that well, you have something to bargain with, in that if you look at them, if probably your employers are to give you the opportunity to do part-time elsewhere, they have something to lose if they said no. So, and they'll, of course, I've seen you go over and beyond. That means that you can handle your work at the office, in-house or in a law firm, and probably save a couple of hours to go into a university lecture room and do your academic bit, or even do your research. You could stay online. Like you said, technology is here to assist us all, and at times you may not need to leave your office to be in a classroom. But that, like I said, for salaries, you must demonstrate that you can do that, and then you must have the leverage for you to bargain that. And then once you're done with that, or with that, you must have a plan to demonstrate that your time, sparing time, and probably visiting a lecture room is not going to have an adverse effect on the clients that you service. You must have a game plan, probably knowing that if your classes are on a Wednesday afternoon, probably you're in office very early on the Wednesday morning. Have that covered, in that your clients will not have a bumpy ride when you are to go and spend some time in the classroom. So with that, I believe that if you have demonstrated that you can do your work over and beyond, you can say a few hours, then you have what to leverage on while bargaining with your probably 9 to 5 employees. And then you have a proper work plan that will safeguard your ordinary clients, probably the one that you represent in court, from having a bumpy ride while you join the academic space. That's the point that I can give for you who are looking at negotiating a part-time role in the academic space. So with that, I would like to bring back Doctor in this discussion. You've already highlighted on how you had at least a stint at working at Uganda Christian University, which is a private institution, and we now know that you are with Makerere University, which is a public institution. So we would like to hear from you, Doctor. If I were to choose, should I go private? Should I go public? What should I consider and what should I expect in that? Please just guide us to make uninformed decisions, because I hear they're not the same. Probably you could think that they are the same, but just give us insights into that, Doctor.
All right, thank you very much. The academic space is not fundamentally where you will become a billionaire. And so you'll have to engage with that honest conversation with yourself as to whether or not you will make your primary money from academia or from other spaces. The advantage of working in a private university, to an extent, you can do a private work alongside your academic work. This does not mean it doesn't happen in a government university. It's just that there tends to be more regulation in a government university, more demands on your time. And as time goes on, a requirement for you to participate in administrative work as well. So depending on what your value system is, if your desire is to just simply make money, and the academia may not necessarily be the primary place where you make money from, you may have to look for, I think in the book of Ecclesiastes, it talks about looking for 7 or 8 other spaces where you can put your investments. So are you into agriculture? Are you into investments? Are you into other spaces? That whole big spectrum needs to be open to you. So in most cases, I would say that join academia from a place of conviction, not from a place of convenience. Although to an extent, you will still think conveniently about where you go to work and so on and so forth. So I would say slightly that the government universities pay better than private universities at the moment in Uganda. But who knows, that can easily change depending on who has started which university and how much they are willing to pay you in consideration for your time and talent. So join a government university, you'll most likely be paid much better than those who work in a private university. In terms of convenience, I think you'll tend to have more legroom in a private university than a government university, especially for those of you who just want to do part-time lecturing. Government universities like Makerere at the moment do not necessarily have positions for part-time lecturers, especially except in very unique circumstances, which may not be the case for most private universities that are able to engage you in that regard. So what's your value system? Are you teaching from a point of conviction or convenience? Are you looking at teaching as just added income, or you think that you can give back to society? All those are some of the considerations that you must have, but that does not mean you cannot do legal consulting work. You cannot participate in other non-legal ways of making money, as long as they are legal, but not necessarily about the law. So you can spread out. Some people are going into investments, some people are going into construction. Nona was talking about, and rightfully so, partnerships with other spaces, other universities, and so on. Some universities will give you short-term contracts as external examiners. Some people have opted to work and teach at Law Development Center, and so on and so forth. So just explore, what do you really want? Are you looking at it as a point of, I want to give back, even though I would be earning from the result of my giving back? Or if you simply want to grow your capital base, I don't think academia is necessarily the place that you will make that. So it should come from more than just making money. You know, one time someone said some people are so poor, all they have is money. You know, so what do you view as your what do you view as your life? What do you view as your purpose in life? What do you see the law as? Is the law a means to an end, or and what is that end, and so on and so forth? So that is how I would think about it. I know of so many people who've taught one semester here, another semester the other side. Or they are teaching in more than one university at the same time. A jack of all trades, but a master of none. I tried that in my younger years and realized I was not being effective doing all that. Why not concentrate and grow people, and the pride, actually, our value in life, if I may say, is in the people who have mentored us to be who we are today. And what I've also learned is that those people who mentored us, a time comes and we get to pay back, not necessarily because we must, but we pay back because opportunity has availed itself to give back to the world, to give back to our mentors, to give back to those people who have opened doors for us. And my experience has been that, at least where I have worked, I've met some of the most selfless individuals who open doors, tell you, hey, Nona, there is a scholarship here, go. You want a recommendation? I'll give it to you. Hey, Nona, don't settle for nothing. Push. They've pushed me. Daniel, go do your PhD. Daniel, there's an opportunity here. There's an internship space, a clerkship space here. Go. I've found that a lot in my academia or academic space, which is not necessarily what I found in the private man-eat-man world, Does it mean that everyone working in academia is a saint? Certainly not. I'm sure all of you have stories of lecturers that made you almost strangle them to death, but you then get an opportunity to do things better. I know I've diverted. Let me go back. Private versus government, it depends on you. It depends on what you want to do. It depends on how you see and value life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You mentioned a very sensitive thing there about the money and not expecting a billionaire through the academic road. But we've just gone past the hour mark of this lovely discussion. We have dozens with us here in attendance. Shout outs to you, Marion, Ivan Kusima, Jesse Magero, Julian, Tony Katunji, Whitney, Vanessa Tamale, Alexander, Sumta. We are very, very, very glad that you've made up time to listen to what we have to share and arrange this afternoon. What that means, for those, I see some hands up. We can just keep those. To those who would want to share using the audio bit, so just put your hands up. With time will permit, and the rest of us can type our questions in the chat box as we enter into the final part of this discussion. So we'll go to back to Nona to let us know, and Dr. you'll add after Nona has shared with us on what would be the key skills or qualities that are very essential for you to succeed in the academic space. Nona, you go first.
All right. Thank you, Timothy. I'll just add to one last point before he left about the spirit of mentorship. I know, for one, when I was joining academia, it was also because I had mentors in the space, mentors who are academics. And for some reason, I have worked in other fields, in other spaces, but I found that in the academic space, the mentors are actually go beyond. And that's something that I've appreciated a lot. I have benefited from it even before I went around, even as a student, right? That they were willing to actually talk to you, guide you, give you advice. And I know we might have students on the call right now. I say it's important that you tap into that, of course, with boundaries. I repeat, with with some being able to do it in a respectful manner. But like Dr. said, the people who are in the academic space, I know they look like your lecturers and they're very tough maybe when they're in the classroom. I can attest to that. It was different for me because almost everyone, literally everyone at the faculty talked to me. And so it was a big switch when I come back as faculty, and they're really warm and actually supportive. And so I just want to say, for the young lawyers out there, if you're actually interested in this space, reach out to some academics to be your mentors, to guide you. And I think it would be really great. It would be really helpful. It was very helpful for me. Okay, so in terms of the skills and the qualities, I feel like we've already touched some of them, and Dr. put it really aptly. When it comes between convenience and I've forgotten the word that he used, but essentially, and conviction, right? And this is again not to say that you must suffer and that you must take on opportunities where, because again, some like you mentioned, when you're working in a public university right now, the pay is definitely better than in a private university. And so when you're making these choices, you have to think about also your sustenance, because it's important. If you're not well economically, it can affect your performance as well, and how your reaction and your attitude towards the job and the way that you do your work. And so I think it's very important to keep that in mind. So, but when I talk about, it's important, your value system, before we even talk about skills and qualities, is it something that you actually want to do because you want, because of the value that you think you can give back? Sometimes it might not even be the value. It could also be what you're getting from it. And it's okay to be honest about it. At least I'll be frank, I definitely see academia as an opportunity to grow in my research career. And that's great, right? So if you're that person out there who feels that, number one, I think one of the key traits about people in this space is that you are independent-minded. Typically, there's no one chasing after you to go and teach or to do what you need to do, right? People just, are expected to know what is required of them. And so typically you are independent-minded, you're able to do your work, you're expected, of course, to be hard, diligent, and name it, that goes across. But I think when I go specific to the qualities you require, you definitely have to think about it from your value system. Is that something that you want to do? And I won't get into depth with that because Dr. mentioned. When it comes to the qualifications, I know now most universities have it. Minimum would be a master's degree in law, if I'm not wrong. I'm not very conversant about the requirements for others. I know that for the public universities, you will be required to have a master's degree. So first and foremost, that's something that you need to get to be able to qualify. But also another important quality, of course, would be that you are, I think it's very important that you are open-minded in this space. And that's something that I have learned. Even if you're not, somehow the students will get you to be there. Like Dr. said, when we're engaging with these concepts, when we are teaching the law, we are made to be humble. You are humbled if you don't, if you were not already, then you will be humbled. And that's because, number one, you're not only working with people who have done the most, like they are well learned, they are experts in their field, they are recognized nationally and globally, and that's definitely something to learn from. But also you're engaging with young people, and they are going through your hands. So you are also sort of importantly mentoring these people. And so those are some of the things that you have to think about. So it's different. Our generations are different. And I keep hearing this, now we are teaching Gen Zs, and people keep comparing, when we were teaching the previous, the millennials, it was different maybe, but that's also for me something that I think is a key learning point. Is generations change, we are not the same, and so that for me is very important to keep in mind. And so just as a summary, beyond the academic qualifications are not to be required. When it comes to the skills involved, you are going to, of course, be expected to do, there'll be research, the basic things, research skills, writing, because you're expected to be able to publish. And so this is not to scare you if you feel that you have not reached a certain level. We are learning. I'm sure even the experts and the professors that we know today started somewhere. So we grow in the space. But those are just some of the few I can share for now.
All right, thanks for sharing. Doctor, something to add on the qualities?
Sorry, say that again.
Yes, we've been sharing on the skills, the key skills and qualities that you would have to have a successful career in academia. Just listen from Nona. We're asking if you have anything to add to that.
All
right. Doctor, you've just muted your mic, but we can.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to look at skills that are not necessarily academic, but are very key in pursuing this career. And I know that Nona has mentioned some of them. First of all, you need a high level, a high level of emotional intelligence to deal with students and colleagues alike. Because it's not easy to deal with lawyers generally. And so you need a high level of emotional intelligence. And I say that because I've gotten it wrong sometimes. I've lost my cool sometimes when you're dealing with students. And students can be quite some bit of work. And depending on your temperament, if you're a red, it can take a lot of effort when a student asks you what you think is an obvious question or asks a question that has just been asked. So a lot of emotional intelligence, even with fellow colleagues, fellow teaching colleagues, fellow lawyers, who may not necessarily appreciate what you're doing and how you do it. So emotional intelligence. And those of you who've been to the courtroom, you know what I mean, how sometimes it can be really difficult to deal with opposite counsel who is quite nasty. And I'll not say whether they are female or male, as long as they're opposite counsel. That is one thing. Two, grit. In academia, there is a saying, publish or perish. Publish or perish. Now, sometimes you submit your article to a journal and it takes forever. The ability to keep pushing can be quite some work. To be persistent can be quite some work. In emotional intelligence, there is a lot of patience that is required to deal with students, especially when you are supervising students in their academic work. I noticed that in Uganda, the number of excuses we receive from students or that we give ourselves is so humongous compared to when we went to study abroad. I went to do my master's and PhD abroad, and there was never time when I gave an excuse for late submission of work. There, once you're late, you don't even waste time, If you're lucky, the lecturer or supervisor will give you 20 minutes or 20 seconds to give your excuse, and then they'll tell you, you've wasted a lot of my time. You knew the rules, you didn't follow the rules. Wait until the next time this subject is offered. We have so many excuses in Uganda, and of course we are part and parcel of Uganda. As lecturers, we try to be accommodative, and when we fail, we have branded names. We become the subject on people's WhatsApp statuses, Facebook accounts, Twitter. So you also need a lot of emotional intelligence to be able to say, it's okay, I believe I'm doing the right thing. So that is not easy at all. to deal with the name calling and the innuendos and so on and so forth. The other thing is just the ability to keep on having an open mind to new information, especially information that people assume you know when you don't. I always tell my students the only difference between you and I is that I got to study these things before you, but you're bright people and you should be able to do it and so on and so forth. So that just having that, you know, eating humble pie before your clients who are the students and before your fellow lecturers and also the bosses who make sometimes and demands that you think are really unnecessary upon you. But more importantly, you must love what you do. You must love what you do because it is you who sets the mood in the room. If you come in and you're angry, everyone is solemn. If you come in and you are jovial, everyone becomes jovial. If you engage the people, they also engage you back. So you're the one who sets the stage. And remember that you benefit more many times by just being willing to listen. You know, I have a student, he was just defended this proposal. I remember my first interface with him, I was teaching citizenship, and he's an immigration officer. So he kept on challenging what I was saying, you know. So the ability to say, this is what is in the law, but I am aware that you have the practical side of it. So share with us. I will also learn, you know, from your experience. That ability to eat the humble pie and say, let the student teach the teacher, you know, and to say to yourself, it's okay. And you can either draw them to you to be able to gain a lot more, or you can push them away from you. So just that ability to work around those lines, but also to know that you are building lifelong relationships that will help you in the future. I've gone to courtrooms, I've gone to immigration offices, I've gone to specific spaces where I have found my students and they have opened doors for me. So having the attitude to know that anything is possible outside this classroom. I have had the privilege of teaching ministers, members of parliament, CEOs, and so on, and knowing that you are actually building relations. So do not come on the high horse with your upper second degree, first class degree, your PhD, and feel that you are more human than they are. You just don't know where you will find these people. So come into the classroom and say, we are learning together. This is what I think. What do you think? Your opinion matters, and so on and so. Engage them to feel that they are also human beings. That way you get to learn. They get to learn better. And if you have made a mistake, be willing to say, oh, I got that one wrong. It's fine to get it wrong. Oh, I've cited the wrong law. Oh, okay. What is the correct role? Oh, all right, let us, and then you tell the class. That kind of atmosphere you create is a learning atmosphere. And I have really learned that when you tell the students to do their own work and present it, it's amazing the high quality of work they produce, although sometimes they produce crappy stuff and you have to put them in their place. And there'll be those who will test you. There'll be those who will test you to see how much you can stretch, you know. I remember a female student who asked me, how do I call you? And I had learned from Professor Loka, who used to tell us, call me Joe. So I told the student, well, call me Daniel. And later on, with her group of friends, she came around me and said, Daniel, how are you? And she was looking for the reaction. And I decided to swallow whatever words I wanted to retort back and keep calm. And I said, I'm fine, thank you. And then she had this look around her, giving to her friends to say, you see what I have done, you know? Yeah, but you get to deal with people. So when you, for example, see what's his name, Mabirizi, who is suing each and everyone, you calm down, because in my classroom, that's how he used to be. He was always challenging this, always challenging the other. So you get to realize that people have different characteristics. You need to accommodate them. So those are skills that we may not necessarily have picked, but out of experience, you get to learn some of these skills. For further and better particulars, you can read my book. We don't teach that at the university.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Doctor, thanks for sharing. We'll just keep with you because what you've been sharing borders what we are going to discuss next on the challenges, because we know it's not always a bed of roses. So we should know, just bridging from what you've just shared last, what are the challenges that we should look at while we are making our way into the academia?
Actually, Nona will tell you, first of all, the finances are not as much as we wanted, or that we want them. So, so we want more money. But it's okay, because in those spaces, it's amazing the amount of opportunity that comes. So financial challenges are there, of course. Two, depending on the university you're at, sometimes access to information is not as easy as you want it. That is online websites, materials, internet, good gadgets. I mean, traffic jam is also a problem, but you always manage to maneuver somehow. For the lady lecturers, I think they also suffer the additional challenge of being, in one way or another, viewed through the prism of their sexuality, and that a check to their levels of confidence. And so they will probably have to counter that by a certain amount of grit. Sometimes you have no mentors who are around you, who can support you. Yeah, dealing with colleagues can also be a challenge. I have had some spaces where I have dealt with fellow colleagues. I won't tell you which university or which spaces, but it's access to information, rowdy students, people who sometimes I think students are out to test you. There's also corruption. I'll tell you. On more than one occasion, students have offered me some form of inducement or another, cases, fuel, etc. In order to do what is not right. Sexual temptation. People may not realize it, but men are visual, and oftentimes I think some of our students do not realize that the way they dress and the way they approach us can be discomforting, to use a more sober words. Skilled in that area. Some of us have survived by the grace of God, but it's something that we must acknowledge that it does exist. Okay? Sexual temptation. Certain concepts of the law that we don't agree with, and yet we'll probably have to teach them or engage with them. It may be on, questions to do with rights, questions to do with, for example, the case of the girl child vis-a-vis the boy child, the case of sexual rights that some people may find difficult to navigate across. How do you teach something that you don't believe in? dealing with the possibility of losing opportunity because you are either critical. For example, I teach constitutionalism, rule of law, international law, and so on. And if I have to write on that area, if you've seen the East African Journal for I think it is Law and Human Rights, that is produced by the East African Law Society. I have written 2 pieces there on constitutionalism. Now, if someone is to do a background check on me for opportunities yet to come, I could easily be lambasted, or sometimes you fear. I know of some lecturers who have not engaged in certain litigation, or who have not engaged in certain litigation, is it called, because of the fact that it could jeopardize either their clientele, or it could jeopardize the future prospects, and so on and so on. So those are real scenarios whereby you have to make a decision. Bad blood, bad temperaments, people holding grudges against you. You know, I remember there's a space I engaged in where certain lecturers were talking about looking for an opportunity where they will take revenge on a former colleague. You know, those are real challenges that you have to think through. So corruption and others that may not come to mind immediately, but that is what immediately comes to mind. I'm sure Nona can add on some of those that she has also interfaced in her career in academia. Yeah.
Thanks for a detailed response to that. Nona, something to add?
Yes, definitely. I'll just add 3 main ones. Yes, I agree with Dr. that on the resources and the finances, but I also don't want to discourage people. We don't look like we are suffering that much, so don't be discouraged. But yes, I'll admit, but more from another lens beyond, which is the research. So you're in an academic institution and you're expected to do research. It is a challenge when there are financial constraints for that research, you know, and so typically we have to maybe apply for grants and proposals, but it can really be a tedious process, and it's also not guaranteed, right? And I know that other universities, again, this is more of a problem that countries, universities in the global south face more. There's definitely, of course, more funding opportunities from the universities themselves, but also from external players in the global north that are funding research actively, right? And so as much as you want to do this research and put out this work, you know, I definitely think there is so much opportunity to write about so many things. There are so many things happening, and we could have academics that are writing and following the trends, but then you get to want to write, and then you have to get a publisher, and then there's all these costs involved, and then, you know, it's just a tedious process around with the financial constraint that inhibits your capacity to actually grow as an academic. That's one. The second one, of course, is technology constraints. For one, I am a fan of technology. It has definitely made my life much easier in teaching compared to, I think, my teaching now has been easy with technology in a way that I don't think it was 10 years ago for people who taught me, right? And so I again, as I've said, I'm able to collaborate with people across. I'm able to meet students online. You know, we now have blended learning, and we're allowed to teach some subjects online. I'm able to have guest lectures from outside the jurisdiction, be able to speak to my students. But at the same time, because of how far behind we are in terms of technology, I feel like we're missing. I had the benefit of having exposure to technology in such an immense way when I was doing my graduate education, that I feel like my students are missing out so much, you know. go to classrooms that have microphones, but now I have to tell my students, no, speak, come in front so that we can hear you. Like the whole process just becomes it's not as smooth as I would love for it to be, right? So, and then also just being one of my pet peeves in class is when students are using their phone. I find it disrespectful, but I also have to catch myself and remember most students actually use the phone to get online to learning materials, right? So it's much easier. It's cheaper. It's cheaper to buy data than to buy and print all those acts that we used to do back in the day, right? And so I have to catch myself and I'm thinking, should I now make it a rule that we put phones in airplane mode so that you can still use it? Because I then see some on WhatsApp, like just the way we are dealing with technology, I feel like there's just still so much room. But again, partly because of financial constraints, I feel like we're not tapping into the digital transformation that we could have in the academic space, for sure. And then most importantly, the gender dynamics. I cannot end it without not talking about that. It's a big issue, especially in, yes, the teaching, like Dr. Reza mentioned, but also in terms of growing an academic career, there are things you have to think about. And there's been many studies, including in my career itself, on this and how so many times, because of the administrative work that sometimes ends up going to female lecturers, or the fact that it's just much harder for female lecturers to grow in their academic careers than it is for males. And that is definitely something you have to keep in mind. And I know a group of friends who are also academics, not based here, but always having these conversations and thinking, if it's this difficult, and not in a bad, I mean, this challenging, let's not say difficult, will discourage people, but if it can be challenging, and sometimes it can be, then the question becomes what happens when there's, childcare responsibilities and all those that come with, for instance, growing a family. So definitely growth in an academic career is hampered, has definitely gender dynamics, which is a key challenge. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You had lengthily ventured into the technology arm, so just keep with that. I'll probably just put it into more context. I know myself, and I've heard from other people in the academia, is that they'll have now to check both the plagiarism bit and the input of generative AI in how the students are doing the work. You've mentioned about the benefits of technology. I don't know if you can add to that, but also want to know, yes, as we are interacting with technology, what are the new constraints that have come with this technology that we're enjoying?
All right, thank you, Timothy. So just to add, yes, definitely, as I mentioned, huge fan still, but mostly from my side as a lecturer, right? There are various benefits, as I've explained. I'm able to collaborate across borders. I'll give an example. So the book that I co-edited this year on transforming climate finance in an era of sovereign debt distress was a project that I did sitting at this desk that I'm speaking from. We started from scratch to publication while I was here. I did not move. I did not have to leave the country. I only had to leave when it was time to launch the book, because we launched it in Nairobi. And that's the power of technology, right? That we're able to coordinate and have a team of 9 authors, and as well as co-editors in different parts of the world, from writing drafts to the peer review process to publishing until we had a final product, and we're able to do that from our respective locations. And for me, I think that's great. That's immense. It just opens up the space. I keep telling my students, I hope I'm teaching you to compete globally. That is something someone told me 1 year out of law school, and it has kept me on my toes, Yes, it's great. And I think for me, it came from a place of fear. We were always told, oh, the legal field is saturated. I was told this when I was actually choosing law as a career after just joining the university years back, right? And we still get to tell our students this. And for me, technology is an opportunity to just open up all those barriers. We thought we're not just working nationally. We are now able to compete globally, right? And for me, that's great. Not just for me, but also the students. I know that the students are involved in so many things. They're able to have interactions with other law students around the continent, and that all comes with, of course, technology. So being able to work more efficiently for the lecturer, but also for the students being able to engage not just with fellow colleagues, to engage on legal matters, access to teaching materials as well as learning materials. I'm challenged, I'm marking coursework and I'm seeing students citing decisions which came out of the UK Supreme Court this quarter, and it's we didn't have that much access even in my time, Not that's just almost 10 years ago, but you can see how much the space has opened up. They're able to challenge me and ask questions about different jurisdictions in class, and that for me is a plus for technology. The negative side, of course, is the worry that yes, how does it affect the education, because they are now, plagiarizing all these apps, ChatGPT, name it, right? And yes, it's a real fear. But I'll say I think I personally, it's a personal opinion, the digital transformation is happening, whether we like it or not, right? And so we can go around it and avoid for as long, but it's going to happen anyway. And so we are already being left behind. I would say I wouldn't worry so much about how they're doing. You can find creative ways, because we also need to be finding ways to invent, to go, to work within the situation we have, right? And so there are creative ways. Maybe you set an exam, in the way that you set your exam, in the way that you grade. It would help, of course, if we had the technology to be able to find out, which we don't have yet, right? Plagiarism and all those things. But even as you're marking, you can tell. There are things that you can tell, this is too good to be true. I do it at least, and I type it into Google and I see the whole paragraph from online, which is not the same as if it's something from ChatGPT. But I still feel like we can go around. The point is, there's a myriad of benefits from it that I would say we would not necessarily, and we should not be afraid of technology. We should embrace it like we've done with all other new things. I'm sure people were as maybe fearful of having a computer back in the day when it came from moving from typewriter to computer, and there's still things, but we can move. I'm definitely for being able to adjust to technology and being able to tap the benefits as much as possible for the way in which we teach and in the way that students learn in the classroom.
All right, thank you. So to add a cheat code that I found out on how to double check for generative AI, myself, once I set a question, I will also ask it to ChatGPT, and then see what it tells me. So the moment you tell me what it has told me, I can easily tell. And there is a way those generative AIs put their answers. It's very unique of them in that and most of our students who do that will be very lazy in that they won't change. So even the format of those generative AI is kind of unique. It's not the ordinary one. So I'll look at it and have an insight. But if I'm still, if I have a strong feeling, I'll feed the very question back into an AI and see what it tells me. If there is similarities between what it tells me and what it tells me, chances are high you also asked that generative AI to do so. But we are heading into our final round of questions. Good to see other people in the academia on the call. We have Joel Basoga, Herbert Wausibi, others. We have Nicole, Alex Chiza, Chibet, Daria, Sarah, Paul Waswa. Good, very, very, very good to have you. So in our final bend of this afternoon, we just want to bring Dr. back on the mic to let us know what benefits are there. Really, what benefits, what goods has he had to enjoy simply by the fact that he's in the academic space. Doctor?
So the question is benefits of being in the academia.
Yeah,
is that the question?
Yes, what privileges have you enjoyed? That you've enjoyed?
Privileges.
Yes.
I don't know whether there are privileges in being in the academia, really. I guess being called to speak here, I guess being called to speak here is can be seen as a privilege. But more seriously, though, some of you know that I am a Christian, and I'm a past president of the Uganda Christian Lawyers Fraternity. So I think for me it's a privilege and an honor to participate in what I'm passionate about, and that is the grooming of young people to help them achieve their life's fullest purpose. And I think for me, I feel this is my purpose in life, and I want to use it in the different ways that it comes up. Tomorrow, if I am not an academician anymore, I know that I can still be an academician in other angles. This evening, I will be going to speak to a group of young people, sharing my experiences that obviously come from academia as well. So just being able to inspire young minds to achieve their fullest potential, to speak into people's lives, to listen to their stories, to give counsel with a certain level of trust, for me is an honor. I have young men who call me honorable titles, which I can't share here. For lest you consider me proud and loud. But because I have been in their lives, I have listened to their stories. I've attended their graduation parties. I mean, one or two of my students have also invited me to their weddings. But to see them move from a place of insignificance to significance for me is something I cannot equate with finances. Recently, one of our former students at Makerere sent me an email, WhatsApp message saying, "Thank you for what you were when I was a student." He shared his testimonial with me. He had also a first class from LDC. Not that I necessarily agree with LDC having first class diplomas in practice, but anyway, he shared that with me, as well as 3 admissions to do a master's degree in different universities, and we talked through which one he would take, and so on and so forth. Just that privilege of speaking into people's lives, listening to their stories, counseling them. Of course, I've had the honor to even get into personal spaces of people sharing their life stories with me, and me giving them advice that goes beyond the law, issues to do with relationships, investments, resolving conflicts at home, dealing with life-threatening situations, counseling young men who have been dropped by their girlfriends. And at this point, I'll tell the ladies who have dropped boys, but anyway, that's a joke. But yeah, I think for me that is the privilege and the honor to, because I believe that if we raise young people right, then we are setting the stage for a more responsible society, a more involved citizenry that can make Uganda a better place. I think the other details you can find in the book that I wrote. I'd really encourage those who've never read it to pick a copy. I think it will say much more than I'm able to say in this talk. Yeah, but you can see I'm more honored that this position has given me an opportunity to speak to others, but also to get to know amazing people. Where would I have met Nona? Where would I met some of you? Where would I have ever interacted with many of the amazing lecturers and people in the world that have met as a result of being able to join the academia. So yeah, I think that's how I can put my what I consider a privilege of joining academia. Yeah. And also to learn to do things honestly as best as I can, learn from my mistakes and improve them. I think that is a privilege that many of us may not get in other spaces, where people humble you, where you can acknowledge people are better than you, and yeah, and just to see people get better in their lives, those are all privileges. We learn quite a number of lessons when we are teaching or when we are mentoring or meeting young people in office. I have two magistrates in the course of judicature who often give me reports about their work and what they are doing, and that is priceless. When clients and court users are able to say, we thank you for a job you've done well, we thank you for listening to our cases, we thank you, and they forward these messages to me. So I feel it's a privilege to hear that they are impacting society in that way, and for me that is priceless. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that close to emotional speech.
But we need money. Yeah, I can't run away. We need money.
It will come.
Yeah, over to Timothy. Yes.
The last.
Timothy, I'm going to add on the benefits and the privileges.
Okay.
Just to say, Doctor has been humble and he has said all the nice, the things that come with the privileges, I'll say. I'll just add to the young people out there who think, when you're in an academic field, it's for older people who are going to just go to the classroom. I would like to let you know that is not true. We'll be catching flights for those who are interested. It's not it's not a dormant space is what I mean. But it is, so two things. One, I think the benefit that I like about it the most is the ability to control your time. I think that is something that is there's no price tag that can be put on that. In the sense that when the week starts, I'm able to know, and that for me is very valuable. It's something that I'm enjoying much more in this field than I did when I was trying out other career options. Is I know ahead of time what my week is going to look like. Chances of it flipping and having all sorts of crazy things adding up are rare, in the sense that I'm able to plan not just for a week, for a month. And sometimes, of course, things come up, but being able to control your time in that way for me is priceless. But also the opportunity to just, since again, as you have a control of your time, you're able to write on anything. You're able to teach whatever it is that you choose to teach. It's the amount, the flexibility and the independence for those for whom this is an attractive trait that you want in a workplace. Those are things that you're able to get for sure. Of course, like Dr. mentioned, yes, maybe then the finances wouldn't, the typical teaching job salary. And this, you can go to internet and Google the pay scale and see how much each of us earns from assistant lecturer to the top, right? But also, I just want to let people know that there's opportunities, right? So beyond your salary, like Dr. said, if you are you're working hard, and again, it's about your own independence. You push yourself. Good thing, but could be a bad thing, but it depends. You're the one who chooses, right? So you could do proposals and find and get grants for research that is informing the research you want to do. You could collaborate on assignments. I just think one of the key benefits is just the ability to choose the kind of work you want to do, the independence that comes with it. But also, as I said, it includes catching flights to attend conferences, to attend meetings when you write good papers, interesting articles, and people want you to share your insights. Typically, the emails come with travel and accommodation covered. So for those of you who that might be attractive, I would like to just put it out there. It's not a dormant desk job. Yeah, thank you.
All right, Nona, thanks for that. Just a reminder for our audience, just keep your questions coming. I'll be reading a few of them in just a while. Nona, I'll just wish the final question from me, to just let us know what the future looks like in the academia. What does it look like? What should we look out for? What is exciting there? And you can underscore or underline the catching flights. How do we catch them?
Oh, okay, thank you. So when you say the future, I think it's broad. I'd like to think about it in terms of the way we teach and also the people that we teach. Like I mentioned, for years, people have been saying, at least for legal education, We are the space is saturated, and there are just too many lawyers in the space. I remember someone when I was doing my 4th year, one of the lecturers, actually I won't mention who, told us you're going to become irrelevant if you don't leave and pick a key area. It must be a catchy area, or you're going to, in other words, those of you who don't pick a fun, catchy area and succeed in that space are not going to be considered a success, right? And for me, I think that those sentiments will always exist. The beauty and part of it is technology, part of it is having access to the opportunities like other people do now. So we're not, as I said before, limiting ourselves to just national opportunities, but there's also international opportunities, right? So in terms of academia from the side of the lecturers and the faculty, I think the opportunities are immense. And even though there are threats that AI is going to replace us, we're being told, of course, now with time, we're going to end up having more tech taking over, in the sense that we'll have more online classes. You can record your classes ahead of time, and then they'll just keep playing for students who can be enrolled. So it's something that, at least a threat that we've had in the global north a lot, that we won't necessarily need lecturers the way we have them right now. But I personally don't agree. I think there will always be need for people to do research. There will always be need, we get busy. Judges are busy making decisions. Law litigators are busy doing their thing. People in corporate practice are busy, and we're influencing. Like Dr. said, the law is a living thing. So changes are happening rapidly in front of us. But who is actually watching those trends? Who is seeing how jurisprudence is moving and shifting and predicting? And that, for me, I think is a critical role of academics. So even then, there'll always be a role for us to play, especially in the research space. And so I would ease the fears of people who are in law school right now who are worried about that by, of course, saying just we will keep evolving as humans. Yes, technology is evolving, and we will keep evolving and adjusting according to it. So for the students who are being told your law degree, your grades don't matter, AI is going to be the one writing contracts, you'll find what to do. The good thing is, like I said, we're not just competing nationally anymore. There are opportunities at a regional level, there are opportunities at a national level, and we all know, as I hope we have seen, that a law degree is not limiting. You're able to do so much more. We know people who have law degrees and are in a myriad of space. But even within the law, there's so much. There's avenues and opportunities that are growing and expanding. We have more people who are into food law. We have more people who are into climate law. We have people who are into AI, space law. And as AI moves, as new inventions come up, we will need to discuss the legal aspects of it. So I would say that the future is bright. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that in-depth insight, Nona. So we'll just go into the Q&A. I'll just try to keep it short. Just time is running down. I'll just read what is in our Q&A. Some I may skip, may be not relevant to the discussion, but I'll give our panelists at least a minute or 30 seconds to respond to these questions. The first one is a hot one. I'll just take it to Doctor, and it says, why do lecturers fail students intentionally? Doctor, under a minute.
Well, the mens rea there seems to have been established. So you are.
Sorry, Doctor, we're a bit losing you there. Nona, can you hear Doctor?
No, I think it's breaking on my end as well.
Oh, sorry. So let us probably just give him a moment. And the second one that I'll read to you, Nona, is, does one need a PhD to be a successful academic in Uganda and internationally? Yes, and then the other is asking, is an SDG or PhD different in terms of the training they offer and prospects of success in the academia thereafter? Nona, you're muted?
Sorry about that. Yes, I said I can surely take that. Yes, with the way trends are going, at least for public universities, it's now a requirement that you have to have a doctorate. So you can still be hired with a master's level for as an assistant lecturer, but to grow, and I know that it's probably going to become even more stricter because the universities are being more strict on this. We will definitely need a PhD to pursue a career in academia, which wasn't necessarily the case back in the day, but now the universities have become more strict about that. Does it matter if it's an SJD or a PhD? In my opinion, I think the difference is not huge. Mainly when you do the SJD is usually associated with the UK and Canada, North American, while the PhD is Europe based. So typically for the SJD, you're more likely to have a bigger committee, so you have more supervisors who are supervising your research, and you're going to also, would most likely be required to do some course, like some of the course units that the school is providing as well. Of the PhD, typically it's a much less period, and you can have one supervisor or two if the university feels that your field your topic requires it, right? In terms of your chances of success, I think your options are great either way. I think the more important thing is, and this is something that I'm going through right now, thinking about, is of course who your supervisor is and how well versed they are with the field that you're working in, because then they're able to open up opportunities for you in that space. Some people, of course, prefer to go to a bigger university, irrespective of who the supervisor will be, of course, because of branding. So there are those considerations involved. But generally, I think just when we look at the SJD or PhD, I think they both open doors and they both give you access to the kind of opportunities that academics would have. The question then becomes which supervisor, which school, and those are different considerations. Thanks.
All right, thank you. We have Dr. back. So Doctor, you can take your question. We just lost you there.
Hello, what was this about? Why do lecturers
fail students intentionally?
You can imagine I've been speaking for hours on it, only to realize I'd been muted and I was off.
Sorry.
I think the simple answer is that if that is happening, then whoever is doing it is doing a wrong thing. If it's a lecturer who is failing a student intentionally, then it is a wrong thing. Because when you fail a student intentionally, you are not helping that student, you know. One needs to check why they became a lecturer in the first place. If you're just committing malice aforethought on a student, that is totally wrong. That is totally wrong. It is quite unfortunate in my view. But there have also been instances in my experience where students have failed, either because the lecturer did not teach well, or the lecturer might be overly strict, you know, and so sometimes it may be about the character of the lecturer, but let's be honest, sometimes students are unserious as well, you know. And I have had those situations where students have actually been unserious. But it's a bit difficult. We have to pinpoint the exact lecturer, you know, and then ask them. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Someone wants to be asking, anonymous attendee, can Doctor be my mentor? Doctor?
Yes, say that again.
Someone is asking, can Dr. Ruhweza be my mentor?
Yes. Yeah, we can have a conversation. They can look for me. We have a discussion. And normally what I say is read through my book and then we begin discussing, because it's the essence of mentorship.
All right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so I'm available for that conversation.
Yes, the question by Jesse Mugero was answered, and
What did Jesse ask?
Jesse asked, how did both panelists decide to specialize in their respective areas of the academia?
I think for me, it is very interesting. Sometimes when you're given a job, you may not immediately choose where you're going to go. But I recall that I started off by teaching the law of evidence because one of my mentors was teaching evidence. And as soon as she knew that I had joined, she said, "You're going to teach evidence with me." And I was like, okay, this is my former lecturer. I cannot say no. And so evidence it was. Then another lecturer who had played a big role in my joining the university also said, "Come and teach constitutional law with me." And I said, "Why not?" And I started. And as a result of constitutional law, some of those conversations led me to the question of Northern Uganda. I started doing research on Northern Uganda. It led me to international criminal law and transitional justice. And that's how I ended up in international criminal law and transitional justice. Then another opportunity came to teach law of treaties. So really it's about opportunity, availability, and someone's willingness to learn. Yeah.
Yes, and then our last question from someone anonymous says, I am a graduate teacher of literature and English. I crossed to law, now have a master's in law, and of course, done with LDC, currently in private practice. How do I strengthen my academic career? I feel I'm not yet where I want to be, seem to be stuck.
You can never be ready. There's someone called Steve Harvey. I'm sure you know him. He's a comedian from the US. I remember he said a very interesting comment. He said, "Jump, take that jump." You know, one of my dear friends, pastor in my church, Upmore, says, "Jump out of the plane, jump out of the plane, you will learn how to fly on your way down." In most cases, you learn how to fly. You may fall, yes, but you're still alive. So is there an opportunity? Take the opportunity and start learning from it, is what I mean. When there's an opportunity, take it and start learning from it. And use everything you have around you to push in that direction. You already have literature. You're already a graduate teacher, so you have already certain advantages in how to deliver knowledge and information. So take it. And when the opportunity arises, use it. You will learn. I don't think I'm the best lecturer, but I also know that there are days when I've walked out of the lecture room, or there are days when I've walked out of a conference and I know in my heart that I delivered. There are also days when I know that I did a crappy job, and I'm ready to learn all the time. Thank you.
All right. I think the last two will go to Nona, one from anonymous attendee, but very similar to one that was put out by, let's say, from Atuhere Anita, and very similar, although tackled earlier, says, how best can one do both academia and legal practice, which we probably in 30 seconds, Nona, you can wrap that up. Nona? Nona, you're on mute?
Sorry, yes, I don't know how I just dropped off the call. What had you asked a specific question?
No, someone, two people asking just how you can be more efficient, or you can be more efficient balancing both the practice and then the academia. Something that we had tackled on earlier, just so that you could wrap it up, just summarize it in about 30 seconds.
All right. Well, I think that question would have better been placed to you or doctor because of the active practice. I'll just give an example. When I say more efficient, in the sense that it's not practice like going to court, but the kind of thing that I do is being able to do more research collaborations and opportunities outside of my main academic work, i.e. the teaching and all those. I don't think there's a strict formula to it. I really don't. It depends on you. I think it depends on you as an individual and being able to see how you're able to balance the work. The first question I'd ask is that other opportunity that you have, that other job that you're doing, how much time are they actually allowing you to do it? Because another flip side to it is sometimes I feel like when we are really occupied in those other opportunities, we're not able to give the academic and the students the best that we can. And it's not a bad thing. It just so happens to be that some people have the circumstances are that way, and that's what we need to do for the meantime. So I would say as much as possible, if it is feasible with the time that you have. Something that has helped me is being able to allocate days. I don't know if that's something that's open to you. I just know when I'm starting my week that this time there's something, because in academia, we know there's seasons which are busier than others, right? It's coming to coursework, it's coming to post-coursework, we have exams. So there are things which take up more time. That's one. Two, if you've just started, then you have a lot of class preparation and you're able to plan ahead for that. So for me, one thing that has really helped is just being able to plan my week ahead of time. But that's also because of the more flexible schedule that I have. Unfortunately, if your other opportunity is also really busy, then it's going to mean that you're going to have to find pockets of time which you should be able to allocate, because at the same time, the academic career shouldn't also suffer too much, because the students are looking up to us to be the ones to guide them in whatever field that they're in. I hope that's helpful, given that we had limited facts to deal with. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'll just stay with you, Nona, and ask for your parting shots for the afternoon.
Oh, wow. So we said a lot. Yes. I think the main one for me, if I had to leave, is that if I know that there are law students on this call and young lawyers, so I'd say two things. One, to pick from Dr. Reza, jump. I remember when I was thinking about, at some point in my career, I was thinking, this is not it. I knew it. I knew that what I was doing was not what I wanted to do. But of course, there's a lot of pressure. You should be seen to be doing this. And of course, we have prestige, and some jobs are considered to be more prestigious than others. But if this is something that you definitely have wanted to give a shot, I hope that this conversation has been helpful. If it's what you needed to take the leap, take a shot, try. Another thing we didn't discuss, by the way, is it might not be as easy to get into these academic institutions, right? So while you're seated on the decision, by the time you make the decision, you then have to apply. I remember it took almost 2 years between the time I did the interview and actually got the job. So put it out there. If it comes, start it, try it, and see if it might work for you. It might not. Who knows? We can only know after we have tried. So I think my biggest advice would be is take a leap. Build your courage muscle for those of you who are interested or who are curious about the academic space. The important thing will be entering it, and then we see from there. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for sharing those beautiful words. Doctor, please, your final remarks. Doctor, you're on mute.
My final remarks have already been shared, Mr. Kaja. I think I've exhausted myself in this matter. I can easily respond to a question. But I guess what I can say is it's been a privilege to share this angle of, in quote unquote, legal practice. I think it's a good area, especially for those of you who are not comfortable with the law as it is. It gives us space to engage with the law, and it gives a great opportunity for those of you who want to get into policy work, those of you who want to get into legal research, write books, engage at a high level, and contribute in that regard. Yes. So those of you who are interested, just check your hearts, whether it's something you want to do. It goes beyond just the finances, although the finances are good. But I think it opens quite a number of doors. And I like the way Nona has explained those doors and how many were opened for her and for us all. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
All right. Many thanks to you, Doctor. Many thanks to you, Nona. A special thank you to our crowds. We hope that you've learned from us. We see your beautiful comments in the chat section. From myself, your host this afternoon, Timothy Kaja, and on behalf of the Uganda Law Society Young Lawyers Committee, it has been a pleasure having you, giving us these 2 hours of your time. We look forward to more fruitful interactions and engagements. Goodbye for now. Have a blessed evening. Bye.